everybody. Welcome back to Lilybug's Library. My name's Linda, and we're going to talk today about anything, all my favorites that I have read throughout time. So I was asked to do a video about what were my absolute favorite books. Turns out that's a pretty long list. So I have my coffee. I hope you have yours, and we'll get started. So I broke them into categories. And so the first one was nonfiction, like mental health things or physical health. So there's 5 on this category. So the first one that I found really, and the reason all of these books are on my favorite list is because they were books that somehow changed me or changed the way that I thought about things. And I think that's what made them special to me. Because, I mean, you think about it. I mean, I'm I'm old enough that, I've read a lot of books over the years. And it's hard to narrow it down, but I like the ones that stick with me for some reason. Anything else is, they're fun. I enjoy them at the time, but if I'm not still thinking about them a year later or 2 years later or 3 years later, they wouldn't make my favorite of all time list. Okay, so anyway, back to what I was saying. So the first one is The High Five Habit, and it's by Mel Robbins. So I don't know who is a Mel Robbins fan out there. She's very popular. She has books, she has podcasts, she has YouTube videos. She's got all kinds of things. And I'm pretty sure she probably does, I think she does workshops and things as well. Anyway, she's a motivational speaker, and I feel like she's a psychologist, but maybe not. Doesn't matter. Anyway, the High Five Habit is all about learning to celebrate yourself. And we often, if you think about giving someone a high five, someone did something great, you're happy to see them, whatever, you give them a high five. And she talks in her book about how the fact that it changes something in the cortisol in your body, and you can't give a high five and be sad at the same time. It's something that just kind of flips a switch because our body associates it with good things. So she talks about giving yourself a high five in the mirror every morning. Instead of doing what a lot of people do and get up and you look in the mirror and you think about how old you look, or your hair is messed up, or what you got to do today, or a million other thoughts go through your mind. And she said, before you do any of that, she said, stop, smile, give yourself a high five. And she said, say something nice to yourself is good too. Like, we got this, I can do this, something along those lines. And she said it kind of changes the way that you go on from there, because it's celebrating who you are, and it's just kind of setting you up to be in that right place. So really like that one. I've read a few of her books, but that one, it's such a simple thing, and it can make such a difference. So I like that one. The next one was called Keep Moving, and it's by Dick Van Dyke. And I love Dick Van Dyke. I mean, I grew up in the age of, Mary Poppins and the Dick Van Dyke Show and all of those sort of things. And really, I just think he's amazing, because I'm not sure how old he is now. He's in his 90s anyway, probably close to 100. And he talks in this book about how he got there, how, the main, most important thing is just that, keep moving. And as someone who struggles with chronic pain, that's important that you, there are many days you don't want to move at all, but it's important to get that exercise, to get up, to keep moving, even if it's just a little bit. And not only physically, but to keep moving. Like he still works, so it's also keep moving as far as, keep trying to find something that you enjoy, keep, your friends around, you know, keep moving forward. And anyway, I thought that was really good advice, and it's something that has stuck with me a long time. He also has a series of Tai Chi videos out, which I think is really cool. Haven't bought them, but you know, I do think if it's something you could afford, you know, it talks about Tai Chi for seniors and how it helps with balance and helps with strength and all of those things. So anyway, good advice, and I think he's pretty amazing. We should all be in that kind of shape when we're that age. So the next one was called Walking Home, and that was by Sonia. I'm probably going to butcher her last name, but I think it's Choquette. Anyway, she is, I think she's some sort of a new age spiritualist, something along those lines. But the book itself is about walking the Camino de Santiago, which I had never even heard about before I read this book. I read it, you know, quite a long time ago. But it is the fact that it's a spiritual journey, or it is for a lot of people. And you can do one throughout Spain, you can do it throughout Portugal. There's different routes for it. But basically, it ends up at the tomb of St. James, I believe. Been a long time since I read the book, and I'm a little foggy on some of the details, sorry. But it was her doing this incredible journey. And I mean, the funny thing is now they have what they call conqueror challenges, where you can sign up to, you pay a certain amount of money and you can sign up to walk the Camino, but you're doing it all, you know, it's just your daily and weekly walking that you're doing. And then they have a little map of what your route is, and you can see it on your computer, the route that you've taken, how far along the route you are. And every so often you get like a virtual postcard from them that shows like where you are on this Camino tour, on the Camino walk, and how close you are to the end. And anyway, at the end of it, you get an actual medal that you can keep, and it has the beautiful medals, like they're actually made of metal, and they're gorgeous. So we actually, a wonderful husband and I actually signed up to do the Camino, the virtual Camino, ages ago. Yeah, we're still working on it. The way that my health has been, and different things that have went on, you know, we're still only about 40%, and this is, yeah, we're farther along on it than I'd like, but eventually we will make it. But when I read this book, it was very interesting, just everything that she went through. I mean, first of all, just even packing what you need for it, making sure you have the right boots, making sure you have a good backpack, making sure you have something for all weather. And then as she walks along the way, sometimes it can be quite lonely. You know, you can walk by yourself, and you really have a lot of time to think, a lot of time to think about the past, a lot of times to think about your spirituality, just a lot. So it was her doing that, and then everything that comes with that sort of a hike. You know, I mean, she had blisters, and she hurt her knee or ankle, I think, at one point, and it was just, it was a lot. But along the way, she learned a lot about herself too. And somehow I'm not even sure why, but it really stuck with me. And ever since then, I've wanted to actually walk the Camino. Not sure that'll ever happen in my lifetime, but it's a good dream. I would love to be healthy enough to do that. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, never say never, right? So it was very life changing just to even hear that that was a possibility. So I have my other cat, Sebastian, up here this morning. I don't know why he's decided he wants to come be part of the fun, but he has. So this is Sebastian. Yeah, I guess he got a bit of the spotlight when we did our September TBR video, and now he thinks that he needs to be a star too. So we'll leave him be for a minute. So the next one was called The Gift of Fear, and it was by Gavin DeBecker. And it's been a long, long time since I read it, but it was definitely something that changed the way I think of things. So it's all about acting on your gut instincts. And it was a book that I gave to my daughter and my daughter-in-law, and that I've recommended to, I don't know, tons of people over the years. So it talks about, and this guy has, he's spoken and dealt with like Hollywood stars and government agencies and all kinds of people about this. So it's all about trusting your gut and trusting what you know, what you feel to be true. So, for instance, we at least in Canada, we're known for being very polite, and sometimes that's not always a good thing. A lot of times, like you would come into an apartment building and you would hold the door for someone. Well, you shouldn't hold the door for someone, but we're afraid of looking rude, like we don't want to close that door because, oh, well, that would just be rude. But the thing is, you're letting someone in there who is not necessarily supposed to be in there. And, or, one of the examples they gave in the book that I still remember was this woman struggling to get into her apartment building because she had groceries in her hand and she had keys, and she's, what happens. We all do it, right? So this guy came in behind her and he's like, oh, here, let me help. And so he holds her groceries while she gets the key in the lock. And so there's part of her that thinks, oh, how nice. And the other part of her is not really comfortable with it, right? Like, this is somebody she doesn't know. But anyway, she, doesn't say anything. She doesn't want to be rude. And so she unlocks the door. He follows her in with her groceries, and she goes to take them back. And he's like, oh, no, I'll take them up to your apartment for you. No problem. And so she doesn't say anything again, even though she knows that, this doesn't feel right. And, so of course, when she gets to the apartment, she unlocks the door. He ends up going in. She ends up getting attacked. And, it's just that's just one example. There's like a ton in the book, but it's just something I feel everybody should read, particularly women, because I think it's just too easy to stuff down what we're going to say and what we feel because we don't want to put somebody out. We don't want to look bad. So it was quite an eye opener. So the last one on the health list was The Five Love Languages, and I can't remember who that's by. Doesn't matter. I think it's, I can't remember. But you can certainly find it anywhere. It's been around a long time. So that one talks about how it is that people feel and express love. And it talks about there being five love languages. So there's words of affirmation. So telling someone you love them, telling them they look great, those sort of things. And that's what fills somebody's tank. And then there's also quality time, so sitting and watching TV together, doing things together. There are gifts. If you're giving someone something, that might be their love language, is gifts. Acts of service, so, somebody washing your car, someone doing your dishes, those sort of things. And there's physical touch. And so each person has a different love language, a different way that they express love, and a different way that they get love. So it's important that you know what your family's love language is, because that way you're not doing something that isn't helping them. So, for instance, some people have a love language of acts of service. So they might, wash your car or fill up your tank or something to show their love for you, which is wonderful. But if your love language is something different, like physical touch, them, doing those things, it doesn't make you feel loved. It just, they think it is, but you're not feeling love because they're not sitting there holding hands with you or giving you cuddles or something like that. So this was a great way for me to figure out, like, okay, like, this is the way this person expresses love. And this is their love language. So if I'm going to show them how much I love them, I need to do it through their love language, not mine. And it's also a good way to say to other people, like, okay, like, I appreciate that you're doing this for me, but what I really need is this. So it really kind of changed things. So it was another one that I really stuck with me over the years. So those were the health ones. And I'm going to take a sip of coffee now because my voice is going to dry out if I don't. All right, so the next one was, I called it New Perspective. So it was a few books that I read, and it gave me a new perspective on different things that go on in the world, different things that I hadn't thought about or I thought about in a different way. So the first one was called The Puma Years, and it's nonfiction. It's by Laura Coleman, and she was a young woman who went to the Amazon and Bolivia, and she ended up coming across this animal sanctuary in the jungle, in the Amazonian jungle, and she decided to help out there and to volunteer. And I think initially you had to volunteer for like 6 months, I believe. She ended up staying a lot longer than that, but it was quite a shock to her because she was from your middle class type family, and she goes into this animal sanctuary in the middle of the jungle, and it's hot and it's dirty and it's just like nothing she's ever experienced. And she doesn't even know if she can stay because she's already signed up to do this, but at the same time there's like monkeys that jump on her and try to pick out of things out of her hair, and there's birds swooping down, and there's it's just it's a lot. And so then each person that volunteers there, I mean, they have things they have to do, right? Because this is a sanctuary that doesn't have a lot of people, it doesn't have government support, doesn't have a lot of people helping them, so they really rely on these volunteers. So, she learns to like scoop out the cages, and she learns to do, all these different things. And then they assign her to Wayra. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Wayra? Yeah, Wayra. Who is a puma. And so she starts, and he's this huge cat, and he's not really a happy cat. I mean, the reason they end up in these places is because these animals have reasons that they can't be out in the jungle, and they have issues. So she starts with this cat, and at first she goes with someone else, of course, who is already very in tune with the cat. But she goes with this person, and she is terrified because, I mean, this thing's huge and it can attack, and it seems very cranky, and all of these things. But she gets used to the cat, and she kind of gets to experience what it's like to really connect with this creature and to just fall in love with it, and really to fall in love with the whole place. And in the meantime, there's so much that goes on. I mean, there's poachers, and there's wildfires, and all these things that could destroy the sanctuary and all the animals in it. And so she's trying to do what she set out to do, and she's the time comes for her to leave, and she can't. And it kind of goes on from there. But it's a fascinating story, and really makes you think about some of these, about trying to save these animals and some of the sanctuaries and what they go through, and how it's not all clean and tidy and neat, and some of the challenges that go on there. So it was very good. I really enjoyed it. The next one was I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, and that was by Austin Channing Brown. And it was also very good. Very there was a lot to unpack in it. It's basically this woman who grew up like she's white, or she's black, she's female, she's Christian, she's middle class, but she's growing up in a world that is mostly white, and the way she is treated is still different. And so she talks. The part that really stuck out to me and that I still remember was her working in an office, and she was either the only black woman in the office or close to, but basically it was the difference in the way that she's treated by her colleagues, and they don't even realize they're doing it. But she said, you really have to be careful, because she said if you don't want to go out to lunch, then you're aloof, and if you like, anything that you do is perceived differently than if you were white. And I can't do it justice by telling you about it, but it is something that it really should be read by everyone, and it really gives you more of an idea of ways that people that white people are looking at things and think that they're doing the right thing or think that they're helping, but really there's like a whole other layer that they need to really think about and examine what they're saying and their motives and everything that goes with that. So it's about racial justice. It's about the way that things are perceived, the way that that Caucasian people are kind of soothing their own souls without actually doing some of the work that needs to be done. So anyway, I recommend that one. It's a tough read. It's you don't always. It's a lot of things that I'm sure all of us have done, and we don't even realize we're doing it, or we thought it was fine because we did it through good intentions. Not saying you'll agree with it all, but it's worth a read. So the next one was The Maid. So I know a lot of you probably know this one. It was a fictional book by Nita Prose, and I think she's got another one coming out really soon that's, I think, the same character. But the main thing I got out of that one, yeah, I mean, it was a great story as well, but I think the main thing I got out of it was the fact that it was a character that I hadn't seen before. Now, they never say in the book that she has autism or that she is on the autism spectrum or anything like that, but that was kind of what I felt when I read it. I just thought that's the way that she takes everything so literally, and the way that she deals with people. I felt like that was perhaps the reason. I mean, maybe you didn't feel that if you read it, but that was kind of where my mind went. And I thought it really stuck with me that people don't necessarily see things the way that I see things, or they're not processing things in the same way. So it's something that really makes you kind of take a step back when someone says something, and they may say something that you think is hurtful, or that you think is very abrupt, or something like that. And oftentimes it's not anything that it's not that there's any problem, or that it's anything personal. It's really just the way that they perceive things. So I thought that one was really interesting too, and like I said, really made me think. And the last one on that part of the list is called 419, and it's by Will Ferguson. So this one, it's not my usual read, but I really enjoyed it. I'm not even sure how I ended up with it, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So it was about this woman. Her name was Laura, and her father ended up dying in this car crash. And it starts to come out what happened. And what ended up causing all of this was the fact that he had gotten involved in this phone scam and was trying to like get out of it, and he was they were threatening him, and he was scared, and they were acting like they were, could see what he was doing, and they were, really, he kept sending them money, and it was a real mess, like probably about as horrible of a scam as you can think of. And he ended up, because he had all this going on in his mind, and he was elderly, and he was upset, and he ended up with the car going off the road, and he ended up dying. And so this is his daughter figuring out all these things piece by piece and realizing that it was all because of this scam. And she is angry, and she wants these people brought to justice. And of course, she's being told, as so many people are, that, really nothing we can do. That's a long ways away. We don't know how to find these people. So she sets out to do just that, and she goes to Nigeria. And so it's all about her trying to find the people involved in this scam and bring them to justice. So, all really good, but the part that really struck me, because it was the opposite side of the story, and it goes into this young boy who starts out in Nigeria, and there's oil spills, and there's fires, and there's poverty, and there's like so much going on there. And he ends up involved with this cartel who puts him into a contact center, into a call center, and he's making these scam calls. And they're basically, telling him what to say and what to do. And they're telling him, like, oh, don't worry about it. These are, basically wealthy people who aren't going to miss this. And, like they're putting their spin on it, and he's young and he's buying this. And as he grows up, he, of course, gets groomed by this cartel, and he gets more and more corrupt. And what he says to these people on the phone gets more and more violent. And so it's, but you see like a lot of things from his side and then things from the other side. And it really kind of brings home the fact that these scams, of course, are awful, but it brings home the fact that there's another side to it, and people get involved in this because of poverty and because of other reasons. And it just lent a whole different perspective to it. I mean, not that I agree they should scam people, but it gave you kind of a look into that side of it as well. And 419, the reason it's called that is because the people who do these scams were called 419ers. Trying to remember why, and I don't. I don't think it was the postal, or I don't think it was the area code. Yeah, I don't remember why they were called that. You'll have to read the book. But that was that one. So the next section was historical fiction or nonfiction. I think they're all historical fiction. So there's two or three authors that are auto-buys for me. And all of the things except one are those authors. So two of them were Genevieve Graham. One was Letters Across the Sea, and one was The Forgotten Home Child. So Letters Across the Sea, I did do a video on, if you want to take a look for it. So it was regarding soldiers going to Hong Kong and during World War II, and how they went there kind of untrained and didn't really know what they were in for. And it was to do with that. And it also had to do with the fact that there was a lot of anti-Semitic sentiment in Canada around that time period. So it was all very interesting. The Forgotten Home, The Forgotten Home Child had to do with children being sent over from England during World War II, and the fact that they were coming to Canada thinking they were going to be taken care of and safe, and that wasn't always the case. So it involved that. And then the next two were Kristen Hanna. One was The Women, which I just read, so there is a video about that as well, and that involved a nurse in Vietnam. And one was The Nightingale, which involved women in during World War II and kind of the underground spy aspect of that. And then the other ones, three or more, would be from Kate Quinn. Basically, anything that woman writes is amazing. So there was the Alice Network, the Huntress, Diamond Eye, all having to do with different women during World War II or after. The Huntress was someone who the main character felt was actually had been a Nazi, and now was about to become her stepmother. So it was really good. The Alice Network was a network of women during World War II. Diamond Eye was about a woman sniper. So all amazing stories. Like I said, Kate Quinn and Kristen Hanna, I'd read anything they wrote. I mean, they're incredible writers. And the other one was by Stacey Lee, and it was called The Downstairs Girl. And this was about a Chinese girl in the early 1900s, I think, and basically how Chinese people were treated then, and the fact that they were very much not even second-class citizens. They were treated more like third-class citizens. And she had worked for a hat maker and a few other jobs, and then she ends up getting a job as an advice columnist, but nobody knows her identity. And so it has to do with that and how she kind of dealt with all that, and how she really wanted a better life for her and her father, and it had to do with her also finding out things about her past, and kind of having dignity, and really trying to show that she was just as good as anyone else. Anyway, it was a really good story, and something you don't hear a lot about. I mean, you can hear, there's quite a few stories about civil rights and about slavery and about all of that, but you don't hear too much from the aspect of the people from China that came over to build railroads and do different things. So just kind of a different take on it. So that one was really good. I'm going to take a short break, and I will be right back. Okay, so pain pills, fresh coffee, and a little rest, and I'm back. So we'll finish this up. So the next one was fantasy or sci-fi. So these are ones that are a little more lighthearted, but they have stuck with me for years, even to become part of kind of our family culture, I guess you'd say. So the first one was The Wool, the first book in the Silo series, and it's called Wool, and it's by Hugh Howey. So that one was just so fascinating to us. We read all of them, and it was these people. Trying to think why they ended up there. There's supposed to be, I guess, this cataclysmic event, and they go into this silo that is supposed to protect them, with the thought that they would come out when everything was fine. So anyway, they go in there, but they don't come out. This goes on for years and years, and they, like, we're not talking just a small silo. I mean, these things are huge, and they have levels to them, and people have apartments in them, and it's they work there on different things. So time goes on and they don't know any different, right? Like, they were born there and they're brought up there and they die there. So it's all about kind of what happens throughout that, and people kind of starting to question that and what happens when they do. And I won't give anything away, but it's a great read, and I don't know how many books there was in the series because I think it started out maybe as like a serial newspaper thing. Um, so the first two or three are quite short, and then they get a little longer as you go along. But I think there's probably like maybe seven in the series. But really good, really interesting, and definitely something that has stuck with us. So the next one was the Harry Potter series, and that was we're not going to get into anything about the author, but the series was great, and it came out. The first one came out roughly when my children were just old enough to kind of really be interested in it. So I read all of the books out loud to them over the years. So they grew as the books continued. And so each time that one came out, they were roughly the right age for us to be able to read it. And although, from the very beginning, pretty much, they could have read them themselves, but we were all interested in them. So it became a real family event, and I would read them all out loud. And it really just became part of our heart, part of our family. So I get choked up even saying it, but it means a lot to us in that way. So not saying it's the best series in the world or anything, but it had a special place. So the next one was 11/23/63 by Stephen King. So I've read a lot of Stephen King over the years. Don't read much anymore of him just because I think I've softened over the years, and I'm not I don't cope with those type of books as much anymore. I like things a little cozier than than what he writes, but the ones that aren't really horror filled, I still enjoy, and this was one of those. And that was the date that uh, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And so it's all about time travel back to the past and trying to stop that, and whether that should be stopped and what that would change and those sort of things. And the reason it kind of stuck with us and still does is because there's a spot where he finds this time travel spot, and it's in the back of this store who sells things at like these incredible prices. And like everybody's thinking like, how can they do that? Like, but it's because the guy's going back into 1960 something to get like the meat and the eggs and all of those sort of things to make what he is making in this time period. And the funny thing is there is a store fairly close to where we live who also does not time travel, I don't think, but who also sells things at really good prices compared to the regular grocery stores. And so we often joke that they must have a portal in the back where they're going to get their ingredients. So in that way, it's kind of become part of what we think about. And then the last one, or no, not quite the last one. The next one is Black Dagger Brotherhood, which is by J.R. Ward. So this is a steamy vampire series with multiple books, probably 20 something at this point. And we read most of them. We haven't we gave up on them eventually, but we'll get to that. But from the beginning, they were about this brotherhood of vampires, but they're not actual brothers. It's a brotherhood in name because they are all they've all got each other's back and they're all connected. And so each one is essentially a love story about them meeting someone and kind of learning to communicate and to love each other. And it's usually the same as most love stories. It's like a friends to enemies, or it's something along those lines. But there's also another aspect to the story which involves these creatures called the Lessers, who basically like to want to kill vampires, and they're basically using humans to help do it by taking over the humans and turning them into this lesser, which you can tell because it's someone that's very pale, and even their hair and everything is very pale and washed out, and they respond to orders and that sort of thing. Like it's and then they're all controlled by this creature called the Omega, who is like the head of the Lessers. And then on the opposite side, there is the Black Dagger Brotherhood, who are vampires that are kind of like the head of the vampires. They have the Vampire King. They have the Black Dagger Brotherhood, which is like almost like the secret service or something of the king. And then excuse me. And so then they have a deity called the Alpha, I think. And I was thinking Alpha Omega, I think that's right. But this person is like, I guess they seem to be female in the beginning of the series, and so it turns out that the Alpha. No, it's not the Alpha. I knew I was getting that wrong. They call her the scribe virgin, I think. Anyway, so she controls kind of the good aspect of the world, and the Omega controls the bad aspect of the world. And so anyway, it's like a clash between these, and then the love story on top of it. So they were really good, and the love story part of it was very powerful. I mean, like I said, it's got a lot of steaminess in it, but also these people are very devoted to each other, and it really comes across. And we read probably 18, 19, and it was all very good. But then the last couple, we started and thought, I just can't do this. They kind of changed the villain in the story almost to I wouldn't say that the villain was comical, but just didn't have the same grit to it that you want in a villain. And the stories became less about the Brotherhood and more about other aspects, and it just kind of lost something for us. But we read them for years and years and years, so that was a good one. And she does have a ton of other series which we haven't read. She did like the Bourbon Kings, and she's done a lot of spin-offs of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. So it's lots of other things that we could read of hers if we chose to. And then the very last one, we're getting to the end. Very last one was called Dead on Arrival, and it's by Dorothy Simpson, and it's a mystery that involves Inspector Thanay, who is this police officer, this inspector that he investigates these murders, but he doesn't actually like to look at dead bodies. So he spends a lot of time trying not to look, but still figure out what's going on. And, he's much more about investigating the clues and things than he is the grittier part. And the reason that made the list, to be quite honest, is it was the first time I ever understood what a cozy mystery was. And this was back before they actually had what I would consider cozy mysteries. And this was the first time I ever read a mystery novel. Other than, I won't say it's the first, I guess. I mean, there was like Nancy Drew and things, but this is like an adult one. But it was the first time I ever read a mystery and thought, oh, it doesn't have to have all this gore and all these things. Like, this is, I can solve the mystery without getting all of that. So it was kind of what made me decide that I really like that sort of thing, and kind of turned me on to cozy mysteries later on. So yeah, that was quite a list. But it was fun to do. It was interesting to think back on all the books that you've read and how that kind of changed things. And so I really enjoyed doing it, and I'm glad that you asked for it. And anyway, I hope in the mix of all that you found something that maybe you haven't read that you might want to read. So good luck with that, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.